board requires the board to approve a strategic plan, which is something the board's been doing anyway, but this just makes clear that it's the role of the board to approve a strategic plan that's developed by the administration. And then the other one that would live within that policy is around the notion of resolutions, and it makes clear that resolutions are things that pertain that the board is going to do and are not directed, and they restate or they tell what the board's intentions are or what the board wants to highlight rather than it being a directive necessarily for the administration.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion on policy 1.101.
So moved.
Second.
Or to approve it,
Discussion? Questions about this?
I think it's good to clarify the role of resolutions within the larger structure of what we do as a board.
Well, so we're not, can we vote with 4 of us?
So it would be a recommendation because it's not you're not voting really until 5 o'clock. So this is a vote to get it out of a committee, and we don't have any language around a quorum that must exist for a committee. The other option is for me to press on, and then you want to take them all as a block in a few moments.
Try that.
Abigail's almost here, I think.
Yeah, okay.
I need to rescind my motion.
Well, since you've determined you didn't want to move forward without a quorum, then there wasn't a motion to be had.
Got it.
So the next one would be 1.102, board member legal status. And this just sort of cleans up the fact that now board elections are elected on a partisan basis. And it does add the HiSET test, which is another approved GED type high school equivalency exam. These are really both technical corrections that are in state law currently. We can move to the next one, which is 404. In the past, there had been some desire to have, if a group of people wanted to speak, that someone would, that the delegation would, elect a person to be their spokesperson. This board has never held anyone to that standard. I'm not exactly sure how we would even go about doing that. And then it also adds the language around not sort of passing the baton to someone else who may have signed up and then decided not to, and someone else takes their time, or reading into the record someone else's thoughts without it actually coming from that person. And I'll answer any questions you might have around that one.
So we got, I received some correspondence about that one. About the fact that, like, at our last meeting, public comment ran so late because we had a longer director's report, and I admit I talked a lot too. Like, there was just a lot before we got to that portion. So, and I mean, I know it's at the discretion of the chair to set the agenda. I also know that the reason we moved director's report before public comment was to accommodate some parents who had concerns about not being able to get here in time. But I want to be sure that we're adding. I also absolutely see the issue with just sort of saying, I'm leaving, read this statement for me, because it's not verified that you're really reading that statement on behalf of that person. So I feel like all that to say, I don't want us to see this policy as a means to inhibit people from sharing with us during public comment, but more as a way to sort of ensure that there's some sort of standard. I mean, I could sit out there and watch somebody leave and be like, I'm going to get up when they call their name and say what I want to say. So I just want to be sure that we're kind of thinking about all of the unintended consequences around this one. I don't know if y'all got the email from the teacher who was concerned about it too. So I didn't know if anybody else had thoughts on that.
Go ahead.
So I
believe that we are trying to expand, and I know from talking with Christian, our chair, about our public participation in those agenda planning meetings, that we're trying to expand our public participation options. So one of the ways that we've done that, as you mentioned, is by trying to push it back. A long time request we've received from just people in general is that 5 o'clock is a really impossible time for most people to get here by. And so our only way to do that without moving the entire meeting was to push it back in our meetings. That is a newer process that's been going on for a couple months. And because the director's report is a dynamic experience, we'll say, it is not just, it is from this time to this time, and that is it. It does provide some challenges with people scheduling, but the hope was to truly allow people to get here and be able to represent themselves if they so choose. I appreciate here within this policy that we're moving that delegation must be selected. As Dr. Severe has mentioned, we never really held anybody to that, but technically we probably should have. It was in policy, and it would have cut down on a lot of public participation, as a delegation from one individual would be a lot of people that would no longer speak. I am in favor of us changing it where individuals may not delegate their time. I think we are lucky, and it is quite possible, and we are ripe at this current point of how the policy is created, where somebody could sign up a bunch of people and take up that entire time on their own behalf and say, I was going to have 10 people that were going to show up, and I'm going to now speak on behalf of all 10, and there's no mechanism to help with that. And that will, in essence, turn people away from wanting to come to public participation. So my hope is that it allows people to be more available and not necessarily more accountable to it or whatever it might be, but it's more of a, we want you here. We want to make sure that someone's not taking on your own identity as well, of saying I'm so-and-so and I'm speaking on their behalf, and we have no way of making sure of that. And that opens us up. But also, I don't want us to have some situation where someone basically hijacks public participation, and that would be an issue. We have many different groups of people that do this. I think, frankly, the group that does it the most often is probably MNEA, and I'm sorry, MNEA. But we have a lot of groups that do this because of that scheduling process that they have, and I know that some of them are going to be unhappy about it. That's why I strongly encourage you, if you're going to provide public participation, to email us what your thoughts are. It's best, of course, if you reach out to your individual board member. But remember always, this is not your only way of reaching out to your board member or to the board in general. So
I'll just say, recent memory is that so-and-so had to leave. Someone will read their remarks. It has also been the case that people are like, so-and-so couldn't make it.
yes.
So I'm reading their remarks, which to me is like, well, you know, I'm just saying there's other scenarios here that I think are also, we have seen take place.
And this is not an uncommon rule in other school districts. There are other considerations that we could have put in here. I know I looked at a bunch of other policies of where you can only speak on the agenda item. You can only do this. You could not speak. You only have 1 minute or 30 seconds. So we understand that this is concerning for some individuals, but truly the hope is that we make public participation as available to as many people as possible, and as hospitable to as many people as possible, and as transparent as possible. That's the goal, truly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it also just coming on the tail of the last meeting, it probably is more, but that's pretty rare for the meeting to go that long before we get to public participation.
Yeah.
If I could just add, you've been talking about this for almost 5 years, about doing this.
That's
so
true.
It's not like it's the last meeting. And the reason I know that is because I've been here 5 years. I mean, it was one of the first things that was discussed that I remember having a conversation about. So, you know, it's not just solely based on maybe a last couple, 3 meetings or anything.
No.
Okay. We good? All right, let's move on to the next policy.
The 1.405 makes a small adjustment to something we've actually been doing, but and is in Robert's Rules of Order. But I will say that when around the adoption of the agenda at the top of every meeting, it is in Robert's Rules of Order. It's much easier to find. So this is really more for all of us in this room if we put in our own policies, then have to go to page, I think it was on 238, maybe it was 314, whatever it was in Robert's rules around the adoption of the agenda. It just makes clear that the agenda is adopted at the top of the meeting, and any changes to the agenda are made at that time.
So how is this different than we adopting the consent agenda? So do we adopt, is that adopting the agenda, or you do it when it's off of the, well, this one says 1D now.
So adopting the agenda and adopting the consent agenda are the same thing.
Ah, okay.
Hey, Frida.
Oh, sorry.
So that when you say adopt the agenda, like, we're going to hear the director's report first, we're going to do the play, I mean, all those things, you're sort of agreeing to the flow of the concert.
Okay,
You're agreeing to the set list, as we might say in
Got it.
Nashville, yes.
okay.
But important to point out that that is the point at which people should pull things from the consent agenda, if they want to. Because then, when that agenda is approved, the consent agenda as amended at that point is approved,
Yeah,
correct?
let me also add, that's the point, to pull anything from the agenda, any action item. If you wanted to defer something that required a majority vote, that's the point at which, after it's been adopted, you'd have to go back and unadopt and
Oh, okay.
retangly at that point.
All righty, thank you.
1.500? This is sort of a cleanup from the other one we discussed about resolutions. So if boards don't make resolutions individually, if board members make resolutions, how can board members recognize people in the community? How can they recognize the good works? Well, it's through the letters you write, it's through the emails you send, it's through the note cards that you mail. It's also for certificates you may want drafted, which our office can help with. And if a board member, and it makes clear that if you want to do something bigger and grander, then you would work through the usual agenda adoption process with the director and the chair to get that placed on the agenda, if you feel like it's something that's a district-wide type of accomplishment or merits that kind of recognition. And then 1.900.
I have one question. I just want to
sure,
make sure it's a point of clarification. So if you want to recognize somebody during the announcements at the end, that's fine. But if you want to have an award ceremony during announcements, that would not be acceptable without clarifying that first with the board and with the chair and the director.
That's the intent of this.
I figured. Okay. Thank you.
And just, and my understanding of it is to also kind of make sure that those awards on the board floor are district-wide, right? Like have that sort of district-level impact, but not for us to feel hindered in any way about recognizing folks in our individual districts, however we see fit.
I think that's the intent, but of course, if it were an individual school who'd won some sort of national level thing, we do that all the time. And if for some reason the administration didn't know about it, I cannot contemplate a scenario where that would happen. But in a board member did, I think it would be perfectly appropriate to work through the director and the chair to get that, make that recognition more broadly known. So, right on time. Ms. Tyler
Sorry, I got here as fast as
is right as it's time for her to discuss.
No
I
apologies.
planned it this way.
Yeah, you did. So, Madam Chair, may I suggest that we go back and recommend forward the five that you just dealt with?
Okay,
And then sort of pick it up from there, as they say?
so make a motion, is what you're saying? Okay, can I get a motion to approve the first 5 policies that we just discussed?
I move that we approve 1.101, 1.102, 1.404, 1.405, and 1.500.
Second.
Okay, Any discussion?
I'm sorry, I'm catching Abigail up on which ones we've done.
Gotcha.
Let me recap. It was the one about that we're now have partisan elections. That we approve a strategic plan, what resolutions are.
Yay.
The one about delegating time
Okay,
around public comment.
yes. Is that going to stand the way it is? Was there a discussion to change that at all?
We discussed it, but not to change it.
Have we discussed about the timing of when people are going to be able to come and speak? Because, for example, at our last meeting when we had public participating, did you guys talk about this?
Yeah.
Okay, so what was the consensus?
Is that it's going to, in essence, stay as it currently is, which is after the director's report.
And then we're not, but should that take longer, we're not going to,
That would be up to the discretion of the board chair.
okay.
And we talked about how this policy change kind of came on the tail end of an unusually long director's report at the last meeting. And then the one about adopting the agenda. And then awards.
Okay. So if somebody has to leave early, if we have another situation, hopefully not, like we had last time, and somebody does need to leave, will they be able to allow somebody else to do that?
No.
Okay, can we tease that one out separately from the other ones then?
We just did.
I thought you just said we were voting on the block of these.
We are, but
We are.
we discussed them all.
I want to vote for everything except for this one.
I mean, we can vote on them one by one, if you'd rather. I mean, we're voting on them at the meeting tonight,
Yeah.
or adopting them at the meeting tonight.
This is just a vote for recommendation to go to the board floor.
Okay, well,
Maybe we should do them one by one.
Okay,
sorry.
okey-doke.
So do I need to rescind my motion?
Sure,
Okay. Do I need to state the whole, I'm just going to rescind my motion and just
thank you. Okey-doke. All right, can I get a motion to approve policy 1.101?
so moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve 1.102?
Moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Can I get a motion to approve 1.404?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand. This is the public participation one. So what's happening here? So there's three.
So I guess,
What's happening here?
Maybe we can go.
If we don't have a majority of the,
If you'll give me a second to cut up the speed, I could.
Why don't we just continue this, come back to that one thing?
Yeah, maybe we should just,
I don't know.
I guess this brings us back to the original question of do we have to have this vote? Because we're just teasing it out and then
Right.
doing the recommendation as a whole.
right?
So do we don't have anything in our policy that requires this vote. Do we have to do this?
Well, it does require to be approved through the governance committee, but the governance committee is silent on whether or not it requires 5 votes. Does it require a majority of those present? Does it require?
Just says we
So
have to
that would be
vote
the
on it.
discretion of Ms. Poople Walker.
Yes.
So we have a motion on the floor for policy 1.404 on public participation.
To have it recommended as is.
Yes. So all those in favor? So, okay. So I don't even know what this means.
So,
It's up to you on what this means.
Is it
oh, this
decided if
is
we
the
move it
vote.
forward?
You just-
I don't want to agree with it, but I don't mind having discussion on the board floor about it. So if you want to push it through, that's fine, but I don't want to recommend it. I'm not going to vote to recommend it.
So your choice is to vote on it and just call the vote and move it on to the floor.
And then we'll have it again on the board floor.
Yes.
When
Or we
everybody,
can-
when, in
put it
theory,
at
more
the end of
people are
these and
here
talk
to
about it
discuss
more.
it. Okay, so let's just
Move it to
discuss it on the
next.
board floor tonight, and I'll just move it forward. Okay. Okay. Let's move to get a motion on 1.405. Order?
Oh, so moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. And then we did 1.500. Can I get a motion on that?
So moved. Oh, so moved to approve it.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Thank you. Okay, we are on to 1.900 for discussion.
Ms. Tyler?
Oh, that's the charter one that was added.
Okay, so you'll see that the meat of this policy is not being changed, but there have been some changes to the law since we created this, and so I just wanted to reflect our policy to reflect some of our views of the way this should be done. So if you'll notice that the last two sentences are the only material changes that are made, only language changes that have been made. And it says, if the charter school is authorized by the commission, it shall remain under the oversight of the commission. The board shall not exercise its legal option to become an authorizer of such a charter. And I wanted to put that forth because I feel that if, as a board, we have discussed and voted and decided against approving a charter school, and they decide to go over our head to the charter commission, then I think that the charter commission, should they choose to approve it at that point, should be the one that has to oversee the charter school. And I can give lots of reasons why if you guys.
It is not, because it's not being voted on.
Go ahead.
So I would say, like, I definitely understand the language, and the longer that we've sat in this seat and the longer that I've kind of asked the Charter School Commission to meet with us, the more I understand that, you know, it's like we sit here for a couple of hours, we debate, we decide no, it goes to the Charter Commission, and it comes back to us. But I will say this, I think about, you know, I'll be gone in 2 years, for sure. So whoever sits after me, what if they decide that they see some kind of reason that maybe they should consider it? I got to know that, you know, let's say that the appetite of this board is to say, if you go to the Charter Commission from here on out, we believe you need to stay with the Charter Commission as your authorizer. I don't know that next boards would, or that I would want to put it in policy. So that's the only question that I have there is this, I don't want to say is it necessary, that's not the question, but just because I feel that way, should I be able to legislate that, or, you know, mandate that moving forward for future boards around their governance style?
If the majority of a future board chooses to change that, they can exercise their right to come back and change the policy at that point.
I've thought about that, but then it's like, okay, so what, I've been really thinking a lot about just policies that we make here. So we pass a policy, and then a couple of years later, we overturn it. There's got to be a better way. So I've thought about that if they want to change it, they can just kind of change the policy, but
Yeah. Can I
also, what does
speak
that
to
do for
one?
us?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah, that was it.
Okay. Ms. Masters?
To speak to that point, I have thought about that a lot too, and about that the policies we create should be evergreen, ideally. I think this one, I would file this one under a sort of streamlining best practices, because the reality is we look at all of the information, make a determination, and then the state sends it back to us without any changes. So essentially, when it comes back to us a second time for consideration, we're going through the same process that we've already been through without any new information for a second time. So it's I see it as us helping to sort of streamline this process from our end. Because, I mean,
We've already voted on it.
that will always be the same board. The board that votes on that application will always be the same board that is then voting on an appeal process. So I think we're just sort of eliminating some of that extra lift around an appeal for something about which we have already decided.
I hear you. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I hear you. I do. I think, though, when I think about the process of, you know, charters applying, or maybe applying for an extension or an amendment, that's a lift. But that's a lift that we can't eliminate. The lift of them coming back to the appeal is just Dr. Severe and Ms. Bobo adding it to the agenda for us to vote on. You know what I mean? It's like, did it really eliminate anything? So that it's more of a kind of, not even existential question, but just kind of a question that I've been thinking about around policy, rescinding policies and things like that. And what's the will of a current board versus what the will of a future board might look like, and how do we develop policies that, yes, focus on best practices, but don't consistently have new members shifting and adjusting and rescinding policy. So that's just where I am now. So I'll keep thinking about it, but yes. I'm sorry.
All right.
I was going to say, I'm in favor of it as it does streamline the process. It's transparent in what the expectation is. And then additionally, it does ideally help us save in a fiscal sense, as we don't have the cost for being that authorizer and those authority costs of administration costs, I should say. So I am in favor of it for a couple different reasons. To the point of, will future boards be in favor of it? I mean, it's quite possible that they won't. It's not that I personally think that I am openly having questions a lot and discussions a lot about this and that with the charter school application. But truly, for a clear line of authority and what that process should be, and for some fiscal savings, I think it's the right thing to do for the school system, not necessarily just for myself individually or for boards as a whole.
And I want to go back to what Ms. Masters said. This is not taking away the option of a board to approve a charter school and decide to be its authorizer.
What's going on with the?
Mr. Little is about to be streamed in, so they're just pulling him up. He's having a meeting virtually.
I'll work on it from here.
Okay, so
Out of state?
Sorry. Is he, Cammy? I'm sorry, Ms. Bubba?
He's out of state for work.
Okay.
Is that what you asked? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So the point of this is that every individual board, regardless of which members are on it, we're not taking away their opportunity to decide to be an authorizer. That still exists when they apply first, when they apply second with revisions if the board had turned down the first application, and then they have the chance to come back a second time. So how many tries are we going to have to go over it over and over again? The board has that decision as a group to decide whether or not they believe it's in the best interest of Metro to authorize a new or open an existing chain, a second location or third location or whatever. That's not taking that away. It's not taking away the right of the board to, literally all it's doing is saying, we have made this decision. That way, when a charter decides whether or not they're going to go to the Charter Commission and they're deciding the pros and the cons of that, they know where we stand. And they already know, am I going to have to come back and beg if I want to do that, or is it worth it? Because what if they turn me down when I come back and that's not what I wanted? Well, now I've got to open because they've already said yes to me. So we're giving them clear guidance on our expectations and on what we think is going to happen and what we have, basically we're standing by our first two votes to say, we already discussed this. You already had the chance to come back and make any changes to make it easier for us to decide to change our minds. And if we didn't do it the second time, then they're trying to go over our heads, which is literally why that commission was created, to take away local control. They want to go over our heads to get that approval there. And they need to know that we're going to stand by our decision and our vote. And that does not take away that right from any future board to decide to authorize a charter school when it comes up the first or the second time for the revision. And so I'm confused as to why you think this is going to take something away from a future board, because I don't see that at all. I see that as actually being more transparent to our charter school so that they know what the expectation is and that they know what the exact parameters of what will happen should they choose to go to the Charter Commission. They know exactly what to expect, they know exactly what's going to happen, and they know exactly what will be expected of them as an entity, instead of going over our head and then having a gray area of what might happen next. They already know if they're going over our head, we're going to stand by our decision. We're not asking a future board to change their own decision. We're just asking them to stand by what they already voted on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'd look at this as us setting a best practice, honestly, and something that could be replicable in other districts, because it is eliminating an unnecessary step that is currently mandated by the state.
And it's actually not mandated, because I double-checked with legal. I'm sorry.
Right. That's part of the process, yeah.
It is an option. Trust me, I went through TSBA. Is it okay?
Go ahead, Ms. Bucks.
I can respond after you finish. That's fine.
I was going to say, I checked with TSBA. I spoke with them about the legal implications of doing something like this, if it was possible, and they have said that we are well within our rights to do this.
Sure.
And they actually helped me with the language of this. So this is created with the Tennessee School Board Association's help and guidance. And I have checked with other outside attorneys as well, and we are not doing anything improper in the eyes of the law, because the law just says that there is an option for this to happen, and this says we will just not exercise that option.
So I can respond to why I'm confused, or why your confusion around my vote. It's not that I think it's improper, or that it's inappropriate, or that it's invalid, or that it's illegal. I feel like it's an added something that doesn't have to be there, because I am one of those people that has voted against charter schools and then voted against the appeal, and then when they come back to us, I'm like, well, at the very least, we can authorize you to have better oversight. As my understanding of charter schools have evolved in the way that we work with them and the way we engage with the state and now this charter commission, I'm understanding what that looks like. And so it's, in my mind, it's my decision is my vote with my thoughtfulness and my understanding of the community and my charter schools, my non-charters, all that works together, where I decide, do I think this is a good practice or not? And so I even though I might now vote differently than I have in the past, that still doesn't, I just don't understand the reason for the mandate, as opposed to saying, I just think it's maybe not an unnecessary step. I don't want to shoot in that way, but it's a step that if the will of the board says that we don't want to be the authorizers, then we just aren't the authorizers. So it just seems different.
Well, to me, it actually takes away the extra step, because the extra step is them coming back to us to beg for us to be their oversight. And the truth is, you guys, as a board, before I was on the board, voted to close a charter school that you were an authorizer of, and that school did not stay closed. The state overruled that decision. So an illusion of oversight when you are the authorizer is all that is. We could choose to shut down a poorly performing and fiscally irresponsible school in the future and be overruled again. We do not have oversight.
And that's where I land. We don't have the oversight anyway. So it's just one of those.
If we don't have the oversight anyway, why would we take on the fiscal responsibility of that? Why would we take on the responsibility of their scores being added to ours?
And that's the thing. That would be a conversation that a board could have, that if they've already been, if a school has already been overturned and they come back to us.
So,
That's a discussion they would have already had.
I hear you. But again, I just know that I'm someone that has had that discussion and said, no, we do not want this school to open. And then whether my colleagues agree with me or not, I still voted the way that my thoughtfulness encouraged me to vote, which was to authorize, to be the authorizer, even though we denied them. And so it just seems like that would be, I don't know, it's something that I'm almost agnostic about. It's just like, well, it really doesn't matter one way or the other, but that's where I'm kind of thinking, or where I'm landing here.
well, I'll just add, I think maybe the term you're trying to say here is that we are handcuffing future boards from the option to have that choice. No board in the future would ever have that choice. And I have also voted in favor of authorizing after that was sent back to us. And in my case, it was a KIPP school, where KIPP would have some schools run by the state, some schools run by us, and I felt like it would be a better all around for that to stay with us. But I mean, I understand the motivation. I do think that it is true that we have less oversight than we think we do, right? But there is also the case where, and it's been a number of years now, because it was Dennis Queen that reported to us on how we actually do partner with schools that we authorize. We do actually, and I remember as an employee here, working with charters on solving issues and that sort of thing. And there is more coordination between us and them if we are their authorizer. That's a fact. Does that mean that, anyway, maybe I'm just rambling here. I do think that there is a real possibility we're going to tick off the state and we're going to tick off the commission, and I wouldn't be surprised if the state came back around and said, we'll decide whether you get to make this decision or not. I'm not saying don't vote accordingly, but I'm just saying because they are being so petty right now, that they could come back around and say, instead of having it be a may choose to authorize, right? And so I just think anything is possible in this future.
I don't want to base my decisions on fear of the state.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying this is just a reality that I think that.
And that very well may happen. And I think that at that point, you would have to look at it from that point moving forward.
Yeah. I don't disagree. I'm just noting for the record that I think the state is particularly focused.
Well, and I think this also makes it obvious for the state what to expect. Because if their expectation is that they will overrule us and never, ever have to spend the time, energy, and effort and fiscal means to oversee this school, and then they end up having to do that multiple times, then they're not living out with the expectation of what their expectation was. This sets that to say we have created our voice when we voted, not once, but twice before. And we have stated what we believe, and we've stated whether or not we think this is in the best interest of MNPS for these X number of reasons. And to be honest, I don't think that if they want to force it on us, then they can legislate that. But until they do, I'm going to try to claw back a little bit of power for this local education authority that deserves to be the one in charge of the schools in its district.
All righty. Any other comments or questions? Are we voting on this, or are we just discussing this, Dr. Severe?
So in discussion with a couple of different board members, I think the intent is to pass it out of committee or consider it in committee, and then it will actually be on the next agenda, on the consent agenda for the next meeting, not for this evening. It's not up for a final approval tonight.
Okay. All righty. So can I get a motion so is the motion then to pass it out or to approve it?
It would depend on the motion.
No, what does the motion need to be?
Oh, it would be to move it to the board floor.
Okay. But that would be at the next board meeting, the first in April.
I move that we approve it in committee and put it on the consent agenda for the April 12th meeting.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? Okey-doke.
Still kind of.
Okay, let's move on to 4.205, enrollment in advanced courses.
Ms. Tyler's.
Yes, I have been looking over it, and, sorry. Just a few little changes. I think you can see where we just kind of did a little bit of language changes at the beginning. And then also, as we have moved forward into a different way of viewing the world since these policies were first created, we did not think or talk a lot about equity at that point in time. Even if we were doing it, we didn't use that word perhaps. And so I just wanted to make sure that we're being clear about where our beliefs stand and to put that into policy, that we believe that our system should be equitable. In fact, it's on one of our landing pages on our website, and I just want to make sure that our policies reflect our beliefs that we're already sharing with the rest of the city on our website.
Who's going to walk through the changes beyond this one that's on the screen here?
The first change is just cutting out and it's actually a typographical error there. If you'll allow me to fix that as a technical correction, it just reads weirdly. Jamal, if you would scroll down just a little bit to the next highlighted section.
Okay.
Adds that sentence.
Can I make a friendly amendment here? Can we change the principal of each school to the district has the authority, as opposed to putting this on the principal right? I think that making this a district, saying the district has the authority to do it, because I'm afraid that you'll have one principal pitted against another. Well, this principal will do it and you won't do it, as opposed to having more consistency across
So
for line one.
I see that. So your thought process is if a student decides that they don't meet the other suggestions to look at and they want to appeal to say, hey, we have additional factors we want you to consider, do you want them to come to the district then?
Well, what I'm saying here is, it's sort of more of a generic, the district writ large has the ability to do this, as opposed to leaving this in the hands of a principal, a singular principal to do it, if that makes sense.
I'm just trying to figure out what that would actually look like in practice, that's all.
Oh, yeah, and it could involve a guidance counselor actually having some input, or a teacher, or other folks in the district, so other than strictly the one person at the school.
I'm more than happy to accept that friendly amendment.
Okay.
I guess on that note, can we receive feedback, I guess maybe from Dr. Battle, on would that change anything operationally on how that's currently handled if we changed it from the principal to the district?
No, I think to Ms. Pooper-Walker's point, it will standardize it so that you don't have multiple interpretations of what it means. It still gives the administration the right to apply it, but in the same way across every school. And I think that's what we're kind of getting into, as opposed to the pressures that can be associated with making one-off decisions, as opposed to the standardization across the district.
Yes.
I guess my follow-up to that is, though you believe it to be standardized, does it also allow for additional, maybe new input, like the suggestion of maybe a guidance counselor or the teacher in their actual capacity?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Is that the only edit on here?
That's the only edit from me. It's the first strikeout and then this one, and then your friendly amendment, which I'm more than happy to accept.
Okay,
That's correct.
all right. Any other questions or discussion on this? All right, can I get a motion to?
I'm sorry, I did
Yes.
just have, okay, so let's striking it out, because I'm seeing what you said about it not reading smoothly. What is that replacement sentence going to be?
Can you go back up, Jamal?
Line 4, the section above that.
It's really not standards that are listed, it's guidance, because we don't dictate that someone has to go in. These serve as guidance for enrollment in an advanced course. So guidance
so-
replacement should not, and just take out the word "and" is the other fix.
Okay, just making sure I got it. Okay, thank you.
I'll move to accept this amendment, this policy. What's the number of policy?
This is 4.205?
4.205,
We need to add as amended.
as amended. Sorry.
Thank you.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. All right, all those in favor? Thank you so much. All right, let's move to policy 4.2052, magnet schools.
That's Ms. Masters.
Oh, thank you. So upon searching our policies to find what policies we have on magnet schools, I found we do not have a magnet school policy. And so this is very much written to achieve that sort of, high level, this is how we're going to set policy around magnet schools. It's intended to give a lot of open, purview to the director of schools, but also intended as a potential starting point as we move forward with discussions about magnet schools. Because I think, the mere fact that I was searching our policies about magnet schools and none existed, I think, sort of led to this, just the overall thought that we need to have some standards in place around this. Do y'all want me to read it? Y'all can read. MNPS graduates.
It's like, yeah, we read before.
I would only add that Ms. Masters and I talked, and really what this does is frees the administration up to make decisions around those entrance requirements rather than trying to find something that may not exist. 10 Ready may be called something else one day, and we need to find a way to make sure that the administration is the one charged with making that transition and not, frankly, someone else.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was another way this sort of came to light for me, was through asking questions about testing standards and the different tests that we use and all of the different ways that we determine magnet school eligibility. And then, I kept getting this answer about something the board voted on in 1985, and none of that's in writing. So it just felt like we need to get something in writing, at least as a baseline.
Yep. Any questions? Okey-doke. Can I get a motion?
I move to approve 4.2051.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Masters. All righty, 5.100.
Tyler's?
And then again, this just comes back to aligning our policies with what we have already said all along is our goal, to keep ourselves equity-minded. So this just changes number 4 in our personnel goals, that we are going to provide an equity-minded in-service training program for all employees to improve their performance. And what that means is that our in-service programs should always have that lens of equity over it. And I think that a lot of our in-service programs do that already, but I think that we need to enshrine in policy what we already have stated multiple times that we believe in the way that we see our district moving forward.
Does that cause a shift in anything, in any practice that we already have? Okay. Dr. Battle,
Yeah, I guess my only question is to clarify, this is not to add something in addition to. Just want to be
It
clear
is to
about that.
take our current in-service training programs and making sure that the people who are developing them keep equity in mind as they create it. So it's looking through that lens of equity every time. So it's not adding an additional in-service training, it's not adding an additional cost to the district. It's just putting in policy that we believe that we are an equity-minded district, and that includes when we are training our teachers. And I know that there are some opportunities, like there are some things where there won't be the option. I think you had mentioned like an in-service training that wouldn't be applicable to.
Yeah, I would think the bloodborne pathogens
Exactly.
video would be a tough one to,
Or like the Jason suicide training program, and those are already set. We're not going to be able to create an equity-minded because they have a specific thing. But we have a lot of in-service training programs that we create, and we can create them and make sure that we have equity in mind as we make them, which I hope we're already doing. So this is just putting that in writing.
My only concern is it reads like it's in addition to, as opposed to an integrated part of our in-service training program. And so that's my only kind of flag. If I would have just picked it up without being afforded this opportunity to have dialogue, it reads as it's an additional in-service training. So anyway, that's just my one concern.
Have a suggestion on how
Yeah.
we could change it?
I'm reading through it right now to see if I can open something. An in-service training program. So it's almost kind of maybe flipping to provide an in-service training program grounded in equity for all employees to improve performance. So the in-service program is there. We know those dates are set, but it's just a reminder that it should be through the lens of equity. So I just would probably flip
Okay,
the.
so you would
Yeah,
like
I
to,
can see your point.
so you'd like to strike it as is and amend it to say in-service training program that is grounded in equity?
I like that.
Is that?
Or aligned to our, yeah.
Aligned
Just-
to-
No, and probably just say grounded in equity for all employees to improve their performance, right? And that's just a reminder for all facilitators to keep, which that's expected anyway. It just
Exactly.
adds that additional layer of expectations that we'll be doing that whenever possible, that we're grounding that in-service training through an equity lens.
Well, Do I need to make a motion to change that, since it's
I
coming
think
from
so,
Dr. Battle
right?
instead of
I believe
us, or how do we do that?
So it'd be your motion.
Okay, well then, I move to amend the existing policy to say to provide an in-service training program grounded in equity for all employees to improve their performance.
So,
Second.
discussion? Ms. Elrod? No?
No.
That makes sense to me. I can see how that would look like a
We
qualifier.
struggled with it when trying to
Yeah,
decide how
okay.
to say it the best, so
Alrighty.
that's perfect.
Just in the absence of any of us, it reads the way it's intended.
Okay, all those in favor? Awesome, thank you. Okey-doke. Let's get to 6.301.
Again, this same thing. I think number 4, it used to say have appropriate resources and opportunities for learning. I think it's important to point out that those resources and opportunities should also be equitable.
Let's get it up real fast. 6.301. And that's the amendment.
Okey-doke. Ms. Masters?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say, first of all, thanks very much to Ms. Tyler for beginning to pepper in our intentions around equity into our existing policy. And I believe there's also an appetite on the part of the board to create a standalone equity policy. Having been a part of that type of work with different organizations, I understand that that takes a deeper dive and a close look at just a lot of different areas, and that's something that we would want staff to be involved in. So just putting that out there, that will be, talking about how to create, whether that looks like an ad hoc committee or whether that looks like a work session or conversations, that's something we want to think about moving forward.
I'll say, I'm sorry.
Okay.
After May 2020, I pulled together some different educators that I knew around the city, K-12, daycares, and higher ed, and we started working on one. We pulled from some others around the country, and then it got to be a lift that said, is this really feasible? Is Nashville going to really, because equity shifts are going to make a lot of people mad because, we've seen the fight before when you shift resources from one place to another. So I think it's great for us to try to tackle that. We could certainly schedule a retreat or a work session, maybe even turn one of our future board meetings over the summer into a work session. Go ahead, Ms.
I think it's important to note that equity doesn't mean shifting away resources. It's making sure that that the resources that meet the needs of the students are available. So it doesn't mean we're taking something away. It means that we're making something available
yes.
to a group that needed it and didn't previously have access to it.
Sure. And so I think it's appropriate for us to be thinking about what that messaging will look like to those who feel like something is taken from them. It's like, no, that heaven forbid you don't have one of 10 strings classes because there's another school that needs a math teacher, so I appreciate that. And I think that'll be good for us to think through what will the toolkit look like, messaging, stakeholder engagement, all that. But it is something that won't happen over one session. I do want us to be very clear with each other and with the community that we're engaging that this is going to be at least a 6-month, if not year-long process, but I think it's good for us to go ahead and get started, for sure.
Dr. Battle?
Can I make just a minor change in the order in which this is listed, not to change the intent of what's here, but maybe shift in the language to say have appropriate resources and opportunities for learning that are equitably distributed?
Well, I'm trying to think about using the word distribution because not everything is tangible. So, but what does anybody else think?
Sorry, I can understand that because in seeing that the original intention is to just have the appropriate resources and opportunities for learning, I think it falls again under that standard of trying to ensure an equity lens rather than using equitable as sort of a describing the type of resources. Does that make sense?
Would it be helpful to say offer is supposed to have? Because you can have equitable resources. How are you actually deploying them, right?
Well, I think we still need to keep have for appropriate resources, because we do need to have, not offer, we need to have appropriate resources across the board, and we need to have appropriate opportunities for learning. So I think the question becomes with how do we get equitable in there in a way that makes best sense?
Well, I think that goes back to Dr. Bauer said distribution, because just because the sources are available doesn't mean they're distributed, equally. I mean, like, you can have $100 available, that's technically equitable, but if I give everyone, if I give, if I give her 50 and give her 20, doesn't mean I'm distributing it equitably without means one thing to have it, it's one thing is how is it dispersed. And not all resources are going to be tangible also. I mean, there's going to be, we're providing a service, so some services are inherently are not tangible.
And just keep in mind that for this list of 6 things, the subject is each student has the right to. So this is one of the 6 predicates for that
Gotcha.
subject. Yep.
Predicate. Nicely done.
I shrink my screen.
Okay. How do we feel about the friendly amendment on equitably distributed?
Have appropriate resources and opportunities for learning that are equitably distributed.
Would you say it one more time?
I'll slow down. Have appropriate resources and opportunities for learning that are equitably distributed. And again, not to change the intent. I was just
No, it
picking up
doesn't
as well.
change the intent, and I'm clearly more than happy to accept changes that make the most sense.
Just ease of read, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to accept that friendly amendment.
Okey-doke. Any other questions or comments? No? We are running up against time here. Can I get a motion?
Move to approve 6.301 with the amendment given on the board floor.
Second.
No? All those in favor? All righty.
And can I just move that we accept the student board member section selection process and then have further discussion if it's needed, or because you'll be presenting a bit more to us. So I move to accept student board member selection as listed.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it doesn't require a vote.
It's just an update.
It's just for discussion.
I can just sort of go over the timeline during committee reports at the board meeting or
Also have time during the meeting.
during whenever.
So we have to rush. There's breathway in the budget committee. So
We do have some.
Oh, yeah, we can do it now.
Let me do it
There's
now?
no rush. We're not against a hard.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, we can have,
Go ahead,
there's
Ms.
plenty of
Masters.
time.
I just have been anxious about this budget meeting all weekend. So excited about it.
You can't wait to get to it. So, I mean, as you know, y'all went through I was watching from home when y'all were creating all of the processes for the student member of the board selection.
And she says y'all, she means Jeannie mostly. So.
Yeah. And I am very excited that Chair Buggs has asked me to step into that role of overseeing this process and then mentoring our student board members. And of course, we'll only be looking for one new board member because the process was created to put into place a junior and a senior and then just replace the senior each year. And we're looking to follow very much the same process that was followed last year. So timeline-wise, we would need to begin immediately recruiting our selection committee members and reviewing the current version of the app that we used and talking to our wonderful communications department about sort of getting set and ready for this process with a goal of releasing the application April 4th, if that seems feasible. And then to hold the selection committee meeting, walk through the process, all that kind of stuff, and begin the outreach to schools also there in early April, around April the 4th. Dr. Battle, does that feel doable? Okay, awesome. So that would, assuming we're able to do that, roll out on April 4th, applications due on April 29th. Week of May 2nd, the selection committee would meet, select finalists. Saturday, May 7th, conduct interviews. I am very aware, because of some of the challenges I face, that sort of coincided with some graduations. So I'll just go ahead and say I will definitely, in scheduling those interviews, I'll take that into consideration, depending on who's serving on the committee, to try to,
Yeah, you said Saturday, May 7th?
yeah.
Yeah, that's a little bit ahead of graduation schedule,
Okay,
so
good.
that should work.
Okay, good. I remember I didn't get to do interviews because I was.
I think we were a little bit farther down the line
Yeah.
last year.
You'll just have to take in consideration, and of course, exams and other high school activities, but
Okay.
a lot more manageable than graduation time.
Yeah, and by that point, we're down to finalists, and we can schedule sort of around their individual needs. And then week of August 16th, the onboarding begins when we're doing all kinds of school board onboarding stuff. And then they would attend their first meeting on September 13th. So that's just sort of an overview of the process. If everybody continues to feel comfortable with it, I would recommend that we move forward in that same manner this year. Yeah.
Will Ebenezer or Anjali be in the part of the selection committee?
Yeah.
I think we can reach out to the committee from last time, and then if we have polls or any board members want to join, or anybody else, we can do that. It was a great.
Chamber involved.
It was a great, it was a great process. Ebenezer and Anjali completely rose to the top. It was a very easy call to make, as you can only imagine.
Yeah, they're hard act to follow. Okay.
Yeah, I just think, oh, sorry. No, I just think we should make it a practice that the sitting student board members always has a seat to participate. If their schedule allows, that the option's always there. So.
So this is already part of the consent agenda for the meetings, and so I don't guess, we don't even need to vote on it as a committee, or do you? Yeah,
He said we don't need to.
Yeah.
okay. It's existing.
My question is when we have board members that are leaving, like Anjali, do we have a plan in place to, in essence, do an exit interview of what could have gone better? What do we think should be done differently, particularly because this is our first time. It's their first time, obviously, but it's also a newer concept nationally. I know that they're currently part of the Council of Great City Schools student board member meetings as well. So I would like it if we can add that as a part of the expectation of you're going to help with either hate to say replacement, but the next person in line. Successor. Thank you, Frida.
I sort of tentatively penciled it in for the week of May 9th. We could probably do it before that even.
Okay.
I just stuck in exit interview of departing member.
I'm just realizing that we'll only have Ebenezer all summer.
Don't tell anybody where she's going.
So should we should go ahead and do that exit interview earlier in the process, shouldn't we? Or should we?
And I don't think that matters as much as maybe thinking collectively about that gap in time where we have one board member over the summer after the senior graduates.
Do we want to give them a break? I mean,
Also,
You only have one board meeting in July. Is it July? Yes, July.
maybe June, July. Yeah, it's only 3 meetings. I mean, so you can give them the option.
till August too, they don't start till September, the new one.
Oh, yeah. I think we leave it optional. I mean, kids deserve a break. I mean, if they want to join, they're more than welcome, but it's not
We're
obligated.
talking about Ebenezer.
Yeah, just for any going on. Oh,
I'm talking about Ebenezer will become a senior, but then the new person wouldn't technically start until September.
And we may be in that situation year after year, depending on what the departing seniors' plans are.
you'll always be in that situation because you always have it's a staggered term.
What I'm saying is you could make it so that the sophomore started at the beginning of the summer as opposed to in September, but
Would there be any appetite for asking the senior to stay an extra meeting or two to see it through, or do you think that that is not a great idea?
5 meetings.
Is it technically through
Goes through
August?
August. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't
Yeah.
want it clearly not that long. They'll be in school by then, perhaps.
I mean, we could consider right now the timeline says September 13th, first board meeting. I mean, we could go sooner.
Why is it, oh, I'm so sorry. Why is it not that 8/16 when they start to onboard? What was our reason, do you remember what our reasoning was for that?
We said that part of it was because Angeli was at governor's school, and we were trying to figure out how to get everybody here in town to do a day here at the board.
Okay.
And then we wanted to just time it with brand-new board members starting when a brand-new board member starts.
Got it, okay. That's it, okay. My other question, it would be, what responsibilities do we think that they would be missing out on, or experiences would they be missing out during the summer if we only have the one person that's moving into that senior position? Is there something that person would be missing that I guess, is that something we would learn in our exit interview that would have been helpful?
Well, I mean, to a camp, or they're going on a trip, you know.
In theory, a retreat or something that they might miss out on, but
Right.
they haven't been coming to those anyway.
No?
I mean, I guess I see more of a case for them potentially trying to have them begin in August over having them participate over the summer.
Oh, yeah.
Just because, you know, for us, it's a year-round gig. For them, it's a school year gig, you know?
Agreed.
I mean, not that we would ever turn them away if they want to come. But I don't think I would want to make that a requirement for them to have to attend in the summer.
I agree. There are lots of enrichment opportunities.
Well, I mean, Abbott's was going to governor's school, actually.
Yeah, so to make it optional,
here.
like, we're not going to deny them, but
I hadn't talked about, okay, hadn't thought about making the summer optional, but I think we should actually embed that into the, all right.
But we could look, I mean, our first August board meeting will be the 9th.
so you can either start their term when new board members start, or you start your term at the beginning of the school year. So wherever the first meeting following the first day of school will be their first meeting that they.
Or we could even make the second meeting in August be their first meeting, like August 23rd, and then they get a 2 week, you know, get a jump on the other.
Yeah, I think there is some power in those dates aligning, just for the consistency of onboarding, training, when things happen.
They get sworn in, when new board members get sworn in, that's kind of cool, too. Do that.
Okay.
Yeah, except for off years.
Right,
Like 23 is off year, so
right,
there's
right,
no new
right,
board
like
member.
this year, like this group.
Like this year, yeah. So I think the only adjustment I think we've landed on is that we want to add definitely doing departing member exit interview.
Summer's optional.
And making summers optional. Got it. Okay.
Okay. That, I think, concludes our governance meeting. Thank you, everybody.
All right.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.